I Am the Night, Episode 2, Phenomenon of Interference, is directed also by Patty Jenkins of Wonder Woman. And like I did in my last review, I am going to split my review up into the two separate stories at the moment. We'll start with Fauna and we'll end with Jay's story. So we see Fauna now, still in LA, and stays with her aunt. And this lady's super cool, unlike her mom, very friendly and protective. Her cousin Tina at first really isn't about hanging out with Fauna, but then she agrees to bring her to Dr. Hodel's place, and no one answers. So that's a big letdown for Fauna. And then her cousin takes her to a party, and she's clearly the only mixed race girl at a party filled with black people. And we meet two new guy characters here who are polar opposites. One is the really nice guy that the girls all like, Terrence, and then we meet this really creepy dude, Nero. And Nero calls her out right away and can see right through her, that she can't even see, looking at her eyes, that she's just white. And he creeps on her again in the party right after, and you see kind of Terrence saves the day and tells her to come sit with him. Nice little writing here, an interesting little tidbit they threw in, that Terrence offers Fauna a drink and she declines it, saying she knows that alcohol starts with laughs and ends with tears. So this is a nice character consistency here with Fauna, that having an alcoholic mother has made her learn a lot about drinking, and that's her perspective of it because that's what she was around growing up. So we see she explains to Terrence that she still believes her father is black and she's trying to find him. And this whole party scene was a nice touch here, showing you as this supposed mixed race girl, she doesn't really fit in anywhere. It's such confusion for her culturally and the woman she's supposed to become. And you feel like a part of loneliness on Fauna here because of that feeling. Her mother doesn't treat her well, she's run away from her mom, doesn't know who her real parents are, and can't fit in anywhere. It's tough. And I'm gonna give Patty Jenkins props for filling that point well. A little weird thing here was Nero calls Fauna at the aunt's home, and Fauna says she didn't give Nero the number to the house. She only gave it to Dr. Hodel. What I don't understand, was there a point to this scene happening and showing Nero calling her, asking her out again? Does Nero have a connection to Dr. Hodel because he had that number? I would guess not, so what was the point of that scene? I don't understand that. There's a lot of parts in this show in general I feel that way, but that was a big one. So then we see Fauna calls her step-grandma again. The one when she called last episode was super drunk, and we didn't see her face, and she came off like this villainous person and is like, your grandpa is evil. But here, it's a different tone. She's sober and says she doesn't even remember talking to her, which is clearly a lie, and she says her last name isn't Hodel, and then tells Fauna her mother Tamar is dead. Again, is she lying or not about this? So Fauna goes and sees her step-grandma, and during the sequence where she's knocking on the door and going to see her and she opens the door, there's just insane violin playing in the background. There really is just too much music going on everywhere through this show so far. It's over the top. So now we start learning about her step-grandma Corinna's perspective about everything, and she's talking about Tamar, saying, I see your resemblance. I just hope you don't have her nature. What she did to this family is a tragedy. So she clearly has resentment towards Tamar and puts her as a scapegoat. But is this also through denial? Because we heard the truth from this grandma on the earlier phone call from last episode, saying that Hodel was evil. So she has all this stuff, seems like, bottled up like a crazy person. And there was some interesting stuff here. Fauna's in the hallway and she was looking at the frames, and there's just this picture in black and white of a young black man. Who was that? And why did they make a point of that? Any theories, let me know. And again, if you know the real history to the story, do not comment that. That is not for here. We're just sticking to the show. And this Corinna character still kind of feels a little too cartoony for my taste. It's like Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians. I just wish it was a little toned down. And she's just basically saying that Tamar is a liar, and she avoids Fauna's big questions that she's asking. And then when they go to lunch together, the step-grandma is super uptight and fancy pants, correcting how Fauna's eating and how she's sitting. So when she shows Fauna Dr. Hodel's art, she kind of gets us into his mindset and his belief system. Says he wants to free us from false rationality. What is dreamt is often more real than we think is real. The waking state can be considered a phenomenon of interference. Title of the episode. So his belief system basically is just saying that really our main course of life is in our dreams, and that this alert state we're waking up in is just interfering with that true destination. And reality is not what it seems. This just sounds like a cult leader and something he'd probably use to brainwash people. Then when Fauna goes into this big art room by herself, it becomes a horror movie for a hot second, and a silhouette of a figure just passes and whispers, "Fauna." Come on. Now you're adding another aspect to this show of tone. Where it's like, what was that? It's so strange to me. It's like a mixed bag here that's just not clicking. I said the last episode was a lot like where it's like a spy film in the moments where they're getting away from people and the doot music, where this one's gonna throw in a classic horror trick. Like, who was that silhouette? That just didn't make any sense. So then she sees in the other room the two men who've been following her. And then overhere's the man in the coat. "Your dreams are more than your reality. Truth is in your veins, what you feel, what you desire." Why would you have then the step-grandma just say these lines about his thinking before this if he was gonna say them himself anyway? Seconds later. And now it was just repeating that, and it kind of took away from the effect of that. Why not have him deliver those just originally? Might have been more effective in his mysterious, creepy vibe. And he turns around, that was pretty cool, and he's like, "Do you have a favorite?" to Fauna. And she connects it all now that it was the man at the bus stop with the glasses and the hat. And it freaks her out. It was frustrating to see her not approach him. I mean, this is the man she set out to look for here, coming to LA, and she just runs away and chickens out. I'm finding it a little unbelievable that when she goes in this car with her step-grandma, she doesn't confront her more about, "That's the doctor, that's him, he was following me at a bus stop." It just doesn't come up. Odd. It just jumps to this conversation where the grandma's like, "I'm not dropping you up your home, it's not safe for me in that neighborhood." And Fauna's like, "Well, it's the place for me, I'm mixed race." And then the step-grandma finally decides to be somewhat honest, and it basically drops the big bomb that she isn't, saying again that Tamar's always lying and lied about that. But really, everyone here is lying to poor Fauna. You don't know who to trust, which makes things more interesting. And it's like, the grandma just makes up a lie in the spot here saying that, "Oh, your father was a French ballet dancer." But Fauna starts reading that now and not buying it, calls her out, and then she goes on a bus, and then there's the man again following her on the bus to end the episode. That was a huge letdown of a reveal. The same guy's been following her everywhere. Great, he's still doing it. Whoop-de-doo. So let's go to Jay's story now in the episode before we wrap it all up. So Jay meets up for lunch with his boss, Peter, at the saloon, and he tells his boss about the call, the anonymous tip he got about Dr. George Hodel. And the boss says some interesting stuff here, saying that 10 years ago, Hodel walked, and it nearly took down the paper. And he mentions that Tamar took him back. But Jay is like, "That's what they said, but I couldn't find her. They shipped her off to a convent." And the boss comes in hard here saying, "Stunt you pulled had so many guys screwed." And Jay's like, "I lost my entire life. I was doing what was right." I like this character, Jay, so far. He's very likable. And I really am enjoying Chris Pine for the most part in this series so far. And I'm not gonna lie, so far already, episode 2 I really like better than episode 1, which I was really hard on. But I almost feel like they could have started with this episode, had a little backstory about Fauna and her mom, but just jumped right into this and her leaving. It just felt more exciting setup here and getting to what we really want to see. It's only a mini-series, so it's not like they have time to plot along as long as they did in episode 1. There's a nice little montage narration going on here with the boss saying there's no justice in this town and that's not going to change. So he's trying to be a realist to Jay. And this works because it's showing the police brutality that's happening to this woman who wasn't allowed on this bus and then getting defended by a colored man, and he's getting beat up too. And this adds good context to the story and gives you a good idea about what Jay is working against at this time in LA in the 60s. So Jay goes back to his place, and there's a junkie, Lily, there waiting for him. So you see he's resistant to her because he has purpose again in his life with this case coming about. He's trying to avoid the drugs, temptation, and he's looking at these old photos from the case, and he's like, "Where are you, Tamar?" It's going to be interesting to see what Tamar's like. They're hyping her up a bit, and it's working. And he says, "I can prove everything if I find that daughter. She knows something." So this is making it more exciting now, which is good. And Lily wants heroin from him and blames him for turning her onto it. So he deals with a lot of guilt, obviously, with this case in the past, the guy's getting screwed over because of him for whatever stunt he pulled, and obviously with the drug dealings. So when Jay goes to his boss's office, his boss informs that Jay messed up on the girl who got killed Janice. He didn't catch she was a prostitute doing it for drugs. And they're calling her killer in the paper now, Bloody Romeo. And then he says the fuzz picked up Brody Styles, got him to admit killing Janice after intense questioning. And he's a colored man, so you see this is going to be something that definitely calls on for some social justice, because deep down, Jay knows that's got to be the case here, because who is this random dude who just killed this girl? So the boss says, you fix it. Find a new angle. But I like the humor here of Jay saying, I'll just write she was abducted by aliens. Or can I do a two-headed baby story? It'd be more interesting. So his heart's still with the Hodel case, and he still doesn't take any of these other side stories too seriously. But we'll start to see that this case has more meaning than he thinks. So he goes to the bar and meets with a guy who has info on inner workings with the jailhouse. And he explains that Brody is a pigeon for the police. He's a dummy they use for confessions. And he's basically saying it's not him either, because he would never harm the white girl. Physically even couldn't. And then we see the opposite reaction where Jay goes and talks to his Marine buddy at the diner. And he says, Brody signed the confession. They're probably going to give him the death sentence. But Jay switches gears here and asks about, hypothetically speaking, a case 10 years ago involving illegal abortion clinics. And now we're getting more info really into this George Hodel case. And he said the daughter vanished in thin air. Can't find her, meaning Tamar. But the Marine says, go to where the wife is, because you said they are divorced. Obviously, a family shares kid and they split time. This was like kind of a duh moment to me. Like, why wouldn't he think of that, Jay? How bad of reporter slash detective work, if you want to call it that, is he doing here? Come on. So Jay actually first goes to the step-grandma's place, and it's the first time he's laid eyes on Fauna. And he's like, nah, that's too young to be Tamar. So he's not connecting yet who this is that he's seeing. So we'll get back to that. But then Jay goes to a crack house to talk to some junkies where Janice operated. Finds out Janice was prejudiced, wouldn't touch anybody colored, so this is clearly not Brody. And so important thing they say though is Janice was in a good mood lately, and she met someone smart, nice. This has got to be Dr. Hodel here. This is kind of the only way this side story of Jay would connect to this main story, which then watching this makes this super obvious, which is not effective. To have the side story for 2 episodes keep going with Jay, wondering where it's going, and then figuring out this quickly that it's got to be Hodel that killed this girl was almost way too easy. And the show almost pushed itself in its own corner here. They didn't set up enough something in Jay's story that could have been a deterrent from that obvious scenario and add more importance to his own case. It was just like, oh yeah, duh, this has to be him. Why else would we be spending time on this? So that wasn't thought out so well. So Jay gets offered dope and he's like, I'm good. But I laugh because then literally cuts to him waking up from it and he caved, which is gonna happen. And that's interesting too. It complicates his character more. It adds a crutch he's gonna have throughout with his addictions. So then this crackhead next to him says, baby was taken from her arms and into the covenant. And she says, what happens when you're a bad girl? You never see them again. So then Jay kind of connects this all to Tamar having Fauna. That would be the reason why Tamar was at the covenant. So now he connects really quickly, which was a little sloppy of a connection because it was a little far-fetched for him to put that all together so quickly. That, oh yeah, that must be then Tamar's daughter Fauna, because Tamar must have had a kid at this covenant. But we'll go with it. And he rushes back to go see where he last saw them. And then he goes to the site where Fauna is. It all connects now with this last shot. And he just misses her. And then he punches the cop outside and actually takes out his tooth and it ends up on his shirt. What? It's just another random thing this kind of show throws in. Something, again, you would see in a Hollywood blockbuster, family-friendly moment. Things that just don't make sense and for the laugh. But this episode was better than the premiere. That's not saying a lot. It picked up the pace. I'm enjoying Chris Pine right now in this role, and I'm loving India as Fauna. She is doing great. Totally invested. But if I was to show someone textbook definition of a completely mediocre episode of a show, it would be this episode. It was completely decent. The mystery doesn't work well when it's so easy to connect it all. It really is just one story there and not realizing it's giving away so much. Knowing that, oh yeah, they're putting all this time into this Janice murder, it must be Hodel because there are only 2 things that have opened up as options. It stops your brain stimulation trying to figure all this out and boredom ensues. And between these 2 episodes, I felt very bored. I felt bored just thinking about the show during this review, so I'm trying to put on a smile for you guys, but it's tough for me. So this one's getting 7.8, step up from the 6 I gave episode 1. But again, still potential here. Let's see though if they can make this a little more interesting and connect now Fauna and Jay sooner rather than later. Because I think that's where it will start hitting some marks of good. So if you completely disagree with me, let me have it. I read every comment down below. I try to respond as many as I can. Please subscribe to my channel. My review of each episode goes up right after the episode airs, so you don't want to miss one. I'll be doing the whole season. And please follow me at SteveVarley1 on Twitter and Instagram for more of me. And I'll see you next time.